Our first item on the agenda is a roll call, and we do have a full agenda for appearance today, so we have a majority? Quorum. Can't think of the word. It's early yet. Moving on, number 2 is oath of office. We have 3 new members joining our group. So I'll turn this over to our finance director, who will give the oath of office.
The 3 of you could stand and raise your right hand. And those have you repeat after me. We'll do it all at the same time. And fill in the blank with your name as we go. I, state your name, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States of the State of Minnesota.
I, Michelle Margaret, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and of the State of Minnesota.
And faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of the Office of Commissioner.
And faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of the Office of Commissioner of the Economic Development Authority.
Said City of New Ulm in the County of Brown and State of Minnesota to the best of my judgment and ability, so help me God.
Said City of New Ulm in the County of Brown and State of Minnesota to the best of my judgment and ability, so help me God.
Welcome aboard. We're glad to have you. So in our annual meetings, we always need to elect officers. So sitting in, since we lost our president, who termed off the board, I'm sitting in to get this started. So we need to elect a president, a vice president, and a secretary. And since we just had 3 people take a nomination or swear in, maybe, all right, let's go one by one. First, we need a president, and the president term will be January today through December 31st of this year. So Robert's rules require that I ask for this vote 3 times. And my understanding is Andrea Becker, who is not here today, has expressed an interest in the president role. So we'll see what this board this morning wants to do.
I'd support that. Andrea's experienced with this thing.
Okay, so that's a nomination?
That's a, yeah, we'll call
Okay.
that a nomination.
All right, we have a nomination for Andrea Becker as president. Do we have any other nominations? Do we have any other nominations?
Can I second that?
What's that?
Second that now?
So hearing no other nominations, I'll close this. And all those in favor of Andrea Becker as president, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to pick a vice president. So this is the same term, January 10th through December 31st, 2023. What's your wishes?
I nominate Shar Kalk to be vice president.
We have one nomination for Shar Kalk as vice president. Any other nominations? Any other nominations? Hearing none, all those in favor of Shar Kalk as the vice president of this group, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, moving on to our last elected position is the secretary treasurer, same time period, January 10th through the end of this year. Do we have a nomination for secretary treasurer?
I nominate Michelle Margraf.
We have a nomination for Michelle Markgraf. Any other nominations? Any other nominations? Hearing none, all in favor of Michelle Markgraf as our secretary treasurer, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We have our board. Since Andrea is not here today, I'll continue to run today's meeting. So we're moving all the way down to 4.1, the approval of the minutes. This is from December 13th, 2022. Anybody would like to take a stab at approving those?
I have one question on the minutes. The minutes state that for Newbrick, the $50,000 will fund a portion of the ED salary. And I recall from that meeting, there was question of whether it would be the ED salary or other support staff for him.
I think
Didn't look at the
There-
video.
was discussion on that, and we did determine that, yes, it was to pay a portion of the executive director's salary.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions on the minutes? If not, I entertain a motion to approve those.
So moved.
We have a motion for the minutes. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to item 6.1, the claims list from January 10th.
You skipped a
Anything
report.
on there out of ordinary?
You missed 5.1.
Oh, did I miss one here? Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. 5.1, the EDA Director's Administrative Report.
All right,
Heather.
Good morning and welcome to our new commissioners and our new mayor attending the meeting for the first time today. You have the reports in your packet. I won't bore you with all the details. I'll just highlight a few items. Note under the multifamily rental rehab loan program, one application was received and approved. That really was the only item to highlight this month, or for the month of December activity. But I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
I have a question on vouchers. There are 14 that are out but not used. At what point do we rescind those and give those to other people who are on the waiting list?
So when we issue a voucher to a participant or an applicant family, they are given 120 days to search for a unit. And if they do not successfully lease up after 120 days, their file is closed.
Okay.
How often does that happen?
It's about 50% are successful and about 50% are not, for whatever reason.
And do they oftentimes find those rentals out of our city?
No. The majority of our vouchers are used in New Ulm. We have a few in Sleepy Eye, Springfield, and Hanska because we do serve Brown County with the vouchers. And then we have 3 that have, it's called ported out, that are outside of Brown County. Metro area or another state.
Okay. I would accept a motion to approve the administrator's activities for December.
So moved?
Got a motion? Do we have a second?
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to number 6.1, Public Housing Program, our claims list. And this shows every month, and usually we kind of ask if there's anything out of the ordinary, anything special. Otherwise, the claims are pretty much the same every month, but sometimes Heather will fill us in if there's something odd.
Yeah, this was a pretty status quo month. The only thing I'll point out is the invoice for Gudis Essen Catering was for the tenant holiday meal at Broadway House.
Any questions from the board? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve those expenses.
So moved?
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion on this? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to 7.1, Home Buyer Assistance Program. Heather.
All right, Commissioners, this program started back in 2019, and each year the EDA has allocated $50,000 into this fund to provide loans to first-time home buyers. During the past year, one loan was repaid in full due to the sale of the home, so we received $5,750 back as repayment. And we were able to loan that money out again. So we used all of our funding for the first time in 2022 and actually ran out of money, got that repayment back, lended that out, so we're out of money again. So we actually funded 8 loans in 2022 in the total amount of $55,750. So like I said, we're at a zero balance, so the EDA would need to allocate an additional $50,000 in order to bring the available balance back to $50,000 for loans in 2023. The average loan amount received in 2022 was just under $7,000. This has been set up to be a revolving loan program. However, until we are receiving enough in payments to self-fund as a revolving loan, we need to put money into the fund each year. There's a 5-year deferred payment It's a 10-year loan. So we haven't hit year 5 yet where we'll be receiving payments. I believe that starts next year.
Yeah, this has been a really good program for our community, and like I said, in a couple more years, we'll start seeing the benefits of it. So we had to invest in it, but that's a part of what we do in this group, is to come up with these kind of concepts and programs to help people in our community, and why not? If we're going to get it we should get most of our money back anyway, and yet we're helping people fix up their homes, and so. Hearing that, I'd entertain a motion to approve the 2023 funds in the amount of $50,000.
So moved.
Got a motion, do we have a second?
I'll second.
A motion, a second. Any other comments or questions since we have some new people here?
Is it a percent of the loan that people can receive?
Yeah, is it 5% of the purchase price?
I'm not sure what the
And it
guidelines are, but.
Caps out at
something like that.
10,000. So the most they can get is 10,000. In order to max out, and I think I've only had one, the home would need to be 200,000 or above.
Okay, any other questions? We have a motion and a second, so all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to item 7.2, Get It Ready Single Family Rehab Program. And what we're asking for is to allocate the year 2023 funds, the amount of $19,000. So again, Heather, if you want to give us just a brief update on what this program's all about?
Yeah, so this is another newer program the EDA created back in 2021. The Get It Ready loan program is for owner-occupied single-family homeowners to fix up their home, either to sell it, maybe an older couple that just has deferred maintenance that needs to be done to get it curb appeal ready to put it on the market, or it could be a young family that's buying their first home and would like to fix it up a little bit. So it's a rehab loan program. The EDA has allocated $120,000 a year into this program. 2 loans were funded in 2022 in the total amount of $19,000. So as a result, we're asking for an allocation of $19,000 to bring the available balance back to $120,000 for loans in 2023. The average loan received in 2022 was $9,500. The most a homeowner could borrow is $40,000 for this program. If the borrowers are over age 65, they are not required to make any payments on the loan. They pay it back at the time of sale. If they're under 65, then they do make monthly payments on the loan.
How many do we have in that over 65 range?
Just one.
Just one?
Mhm.
Any questions or comments? Otherwise, I'd entertain a motion to allocate the funds for $19,000.
So moved.
A motion, do we have a second?
I'll second.
A motion and a second. Any other questions, comments? Mayor, you got anything down there?
I do have a question.
You look like you had a question.
Just reading through this one more time. When we say allocate the funds, and being a newbie, where do those funds come from?
Good question.
Nicole, maybe you'd be best.
They come from the revenue stream, mostly from Garden Terrace, but from the funds that are within the housing fund already.
Okay.
So we don't tax for them or anything.
Thank
Our
you.
major revenue stream is Garden Terrace Apartments for this group.
Yeah, the EDA owns Garden Terrace Apartments. It's an 88-unit market rate apartment building, and both mortgages were paid off several years ago, and so they cash flow very well with the rent that we collect every month. So we've been able to tap into that money to fund some of these new programs.
Thank you.
In addition, we also do receive tax dollars. The EDA receives a tax levy.
All right, we do have a motion and a second. Not hearing any other questions. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. So moving on to item 7.3, allocate 2023 funds, the amount of $50,000 for the Small Business Incentive Grant. Heather.
All right, this is another program that was created by the EDA in 2019, and the EDA has allocated $50,000 in funds each year, with the exception of last year. An additional $50,000 was allocated, so a total of $100,000 due to high demand for these grant funds. This is a grant program. This is money that is not repaid. We were able to put extra money into this program last year due to damages received from a lawsuit in the public housing program. So due to the high demand, the EDA took that money and put it into the grant program, and we were able to fund 10 grants last year. This program is designed to support new small businesses in New Ulm with their first year of startup expenses. It's a reimbursement grant, so they have to submit $10,000 worth of expenses and proof of payment, and their business has to be open 3 months before the grant can be paid out. We are asking for $50,000 in this program to fund 5 grants in 2023. However, there has been discussion that being we aren't having to put full funding into some of the other programs, it's up to the EDA's discretion if they want to allocate more funding into the program. I can tell you I've already got 11 applications on the waiting list. 5 businesses are open and would be eligible to be paid out after 3 months this year. The other 6 on the waiting list have not opened yet, but are expected to open later this year. So I just want you to have that information when you're making your decision. And applications continue to come in. It's only January 10th, so we have a lot of year to go here. And it's just been really unusually busy with new small businesses opening up, which is great for New Ulm. However, as I mentioned, this is a grant. This is money we don't get back, so you want to keep that in mind as well.
And I see you did change the terminology from our discussion last month when we said we pretty much gave 10,000 to everybody. And then we talked last month about what if somebody only needed 7,000? What if somebody only needed 5,000 to get going? So I see the terminology changes up to 10,000 per business.
Right.
So I would like to see personally, and my little campaign here is to see more than that. The lifeblood of our community are a lot of these small businesses that grow and they become storefronts and they become sometimes larger businesses. And we've only lost one.
There's
Correct? And we
actually
didn't really even lose that one because they're
2
looking at.
businesses closed that have received a grant since 2019. So we've given out roughly 20 grants, and of those 2 businesses have closed. One was open for 3 years before they closed, and the other one was open a short time. They closed, but they are considering reopening in a new location. The issues they were having were with the space they were renting.
The overhead was just too high, yeah. Which is some of the things I think new homeowners learn, or home businesses learn as they get into this. And didn't we also talk last month that they'd be required to have a meeting with our new business development folks?
Yeah, I'll be bringing that back next month. I just thought we had enough this month to deal with without looking at changing program guidelines, but it is on my list for February to discuss that.
Now, we can throughout the year, so the commission knows if we decided to leave it at 50, we could add more to it down the road. You know, in a few months, Heather could bring a request back that we add more funding to this, because I really like this. This is probably my favorite program of all of them that we run, because it does get new businesses up and running, gets employment in our community, and fills up our downtown a lot of times, or at least we hope so. So I personally would throw a pledge out there for 75,000, just because we got so many requests right off the top. But I'll see what the rest of the commission would like to do.
I'm looking at staying at 50,000, which staff is currently recommending, with an idea we can change it, especially as the 3 of us become more seasoned. And I know there was also a question at the last meeting whether we stay at the 10,000 or if we lower it to a different amount. So I would like to have that conversation too as a group.
Can do that.
On what is our limit going to be, and then decide if we need to reallocate funds at another point.
So is that a motion?
I move for the 50,000.
Okay, so we do have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. Other discussion on this topic?
You know, I would like to know, I mean, I'm aware that this woman named Wendy Anderson, who I've never met, by the way, is in some kind of a consulting program to mentor these new people.
Yes.
But, you know, just as a member of this group, I would like to see a report on a regular basis of what she's really doing. I mean, we've funded her at a pretty significant amount of money, and I really don't know what she's doing.
Okay.
She submits quarterly reports. She was here, the first quarterly report, she was here in person to report to the board and answer questions. The last quarterly report that was submitted, she was not able to attend the meeting. But I expect her to be back when her next quarterly report comes in.
Maybe we want to invite her, since we have so many new people, invite her next month even.
Yep.
I think that'd be very helpful. It'd be basically 5 of you that have not met her or know what she does, and she's pretty phenomenal. She does some good work.
But see, I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
Me neither.
It's a nice thing to say, but
Tell you that she has met with people looking to start a business to help them with their business plan and financing. She has helped facilitate sales of businesses in town that have transitioned to new owners. She's helped meet with businesses that are looking to expand. She helps them, you know, with financing through SMIF and other organizations, Region 9, other funds that are out there besides the EDA funds. Yeah, she used to work for the Small Business Development Center in Mankato, so she's very well versed on helping businesses.
And everything we've heard has been, the people that have met with her, they've really liked her. And
see, but personally, I've had virtually no contact or anything one way or the other.
you must, she was here last
don't know
year.
if-
You might have missed that meeting,
If
maybe?
you weren't at the
Possibly.
meeting where she was here,
let's
she's
get her
only
back.
been here once, but yeah, I'll invite her to the February meeting.
Yeah.
Dovetailing
Yes.
off of that for a second, and this would be food for thought for the February meeting, if we're going more into guidelines for the $10,000 new business grant. But at that 3-month mark, or around that 3-month mark, having these businesses provide more documentation, more financials on kind of where they stand, just making sure that 10,000 is utilized properly, and maybe at that point we can identify, okay, let's bring Wendy Anderson. There's some things that are, you know, identify some of those red flags early on to get them some of these support systems like we have in place with Wendy to make sure that
I think you're fitting really well with what we talked about last month is they weren't required to meet with her before. And last month's meeting, we were like, no, we really should make that a requirement. And I know that's what you're going to put together in a request, but that's just sound business. Just sound business.
and it benefits everyone.
It
It benefits the business owner, and yeah.
I've never heard a negative word that it was a waste of time or not useful information. So
Right.
I think people really see it as a value. So, but I like that idea too. And, you know, there's been talk about, do they need to come here and present and talk to us about
Sure.
what they're doing? And that's certainly something worth more discussion as well, depending on what this council or commission thinks down the road.
I do have a question. Are these small businesses, startups required to have a storefront?
Yes.
Except for daycare. Oh, in-home daycare.
Yeah, the only home business is in-home daycare, yes.
I also have a question.
Yes.
Is this competitive, or does everybody that apply receive a grant? How does the process work, and who reviews the proposals?
Okay, I take the applications and review them and approve them and all of that, but administer it, basically. It's first come, first serve, so applications are taken by date, and like I say, they do have to be open 3 months. They do have to submit the documentation that's required before the grant is paid out.
And this is just a sidebar. I don't know if it's appropriate here or not, but I hear the name Wendy Anderson. And again, with EDA, there's so many different aspects of it in New Ulm. At some point in time, could we, through this body or another body of the city, have a presentation or a flow chart? How does EDA work? Where does Wendy fit into, we support New Brick, we've got you on staff, we've got Wendy. We work also with the chamber, I understand. And how does this all come together? And where does Wendy fit in with you or with Paul? That's something that I don't have a clear understanding when asked. I was just with a realtor last week, and the clarification or the question was, where do we send people clearly, and what's the process? And I think a flow chart of what services are provided by each entity and how it flows would be great.
Yeah, I
We
like
can
that idea.
try to
We can do
put
that.
something
And
together.
as of right now, I would say for your realtor, that has those questions, send people to Heather right now. When it comes to opening a business, eventually they have to talk to the city anyway. So sending them to Heather can facilitate where they need to go, whether services that New Brick has or services that the chamber has. But a lot of the programs that help businesses right now are run through the city. So sending them to Heather is kind of the one-stop shop, and that was always kind of the vision to begin with, is that the city would be able to facilitate getting business owners to where they need to go and have that information. And I'll speak on something as we get later on in the agenda.
Thank you, Chris.
Are websites clear on that? I think might help with 4 new sets of eyes.
I will
Maybe
touch
you
on that.
We're going to talk
I'll
about
touch
the
on that
website.
at the end of the.
All right. So I'm saying we got 4 sets of new eyes that it might help to see. And we've been seeing it forever and years and years and years, but maybe some fresh eyes might say, wait a minute.
Yeah,
But-
and I'm kind of excited. It's been a while since we've had this big of a turnover on our
We've
board.
never
and
have since I've been on
I
it.
always think getting a new set of eyes, a new voice,
Yeah.
new perspective is a good thing. And so I'm really excited to see what 2023 brings for the E EDA.
Well, in last month's meeting, we were going to spend some time talking about where should this commission go next. We did building, we were out of Milford Heights and we're building buildings. And last couple of years, we said daycare is a priority issue, and it has been. And where do we go? But we kind of said, maybe we better stop and wait till the new folks get on here, and because they might have a whole nother direction or an idea or concept that we haven't thought of. So we're looking forward to getting your feet wet and digging into some of that stuff down the road here. But anyway, we do have a motion. We do have a second to allocate $50,000. My only comment was I'd like to see Heather keep us, and you do, every month we'll know where that money is. At some point, if we need to take a look at adding some funds to that based on what this commission thinks about. So hearing that, all in favor of the $50,000, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to item 7.4, childcare facility design and construction bids.
All right, like Commissioner Schultz mentioned, childcare has been a big priority for the EDA in the past couple years. And it's kind of coming to fruition now with a building that the EDA has purchased. And now we're moving into the rehab phase to do the rehab necessary to rent it out to childcare providers. So Chris and I met with the architect, and we have a final design concept, and we're ready to move forward into the construction bidding phase. We have included for you the floor plan concept. The building is located at 1314 West Ridge Road. For those of you familiar with New Ulm, it was Upper Midwest Management for many years. It's on the frontage road between Cashwise Grocery Store and Americold. And it's set up very well to have 2 spaces on the main floor, and then there's a lower level that will have 2 spaces as well. We are including a restroom for each space, so they're not having to share restrooms. We're using what's called the pod model, which is a fairly new licensing option for childcare. But in the pod model, 2 pods can't use the bathroom at the same time. Well, if your kids have to go to the bathroom, they have to go to the bathroom. So we just thought it would be better if they all have their own restroom so they can use it when they need to. And then the outdoor playground facility It'll be one fenced-in playground area, but there will be a fence down the middle, so it'll separate, so 2 pods can be outside at the same time because they'll be in separate areas. And I think part of the reason they want to keep the groups separated is if a child gets injured, who's liable, which provider would be liable? Well, if you're only taking care of your kids, you're in charge of that group. And then also for disease control, for illnesses not to spread into 2 groups rather than just contain it to the one group. So I think that's probably where the licensing guidelines come from, or rules come from on that. Chris, am I missing anything? On the main floor, we are setting it up that it could be used as an infant room, so you'll see there's crib rooms on the main floor. It doesn't have to be. There's flexibility there. It could be used as an infant room, or it could be used by a regular provider with the different age levels. Initially, we had some interest from 2 of our child care centers in town in operating an infant room, and they've both now kind of pulled back and decided they might want to just expand at their own facility instead. So we'll see what happens there. Until we get closer to opening, I'm not moving into, leasing up with providers. We need to develop an application, a selection process, a lease agreement, pass that through our insurance provider. A lot of details go into that. So the next phase is the construction phase, and then the final phase would be leasing up providers, like I say, as we get closer. The construction bid estimate came in, I think, higher than we anticipated, but Chris Elwood and I have talked about ways we could shave that cost down. So we hope it will be lower than what they're estimating. They were very conservative and estimated on the high end, but I about fell off my chair when I saw that dollar amount. Keep in mind, we've already received a $30,000 grant from First Children's Finance. We've received over $10,000 in community donations to date. Fundraising efforts will continue. I continue to look for grant opportunities and apply for grants, and we'll continue to ask our community to help with the cost of this project. One thing I've been a little bit disappointed on is that our local business community has not stepped up with donations for this project, so we need to do more outreach to the business community. They're all telling us their employees need daycare. We're working on a solution to that. We need their help. So the $10,000 we've received in community donations really have been from individuals and families. I've only had one business donation come in, and it was a fairly small donation, so.
What have we done to market to the businesses?
The first thing we did was flyers went out in all the utility bills in November. That was our big push, but we've also had social media. I need to do more of a media blitz with the local newspaper and radio to talk about this project and our need for donations. And like I said, we'll just continue to
The chamber be a
work on that.
They should be willing
The
to
chambers
assist.
put out a couple times in their weekly newsletter asking for donations for this project. I don't know if the people that need to see it are seeing it that way. I need to figure out how to get it in front of the decision makers. And so I think I may need to create a letter and mail it to the CEOs or the HR. I'm sure the HR people know about the need for childcare when they're trying to hire people. So, yeah. Like I say, I just need to get it in front of the right people, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So, we'll continue working on that as we move forward.
Has daycare folks looked at this and these floor plans, and did they have any recommendations? Or they?
We have some providers on our child care
That's right,
team. So
they've
we
seen
have
it.
definitely taken their input.
Right.
They're the ones that had suggested putting a fence down the middle of the playground to create 2 spaces, which I was like, oh, duh. Yeah, that's a pretty easy fix, but I hadn't thought of it. So yeah, they do give us, and on the bathrooms and things like that. We definitely take their feedback seriously because they are in the know much more so than I am.
And for the new folks, we're hoping to be open summer, fall?
I would say at this point, probably fall now. I mean, we're trying to get into summer, when school was going to start, but getting the construction documents out now, and that's probably going to be 1 or 2 months. Then getting the bids, looking through those bids, bringing it back to the board for you to approve the construction, and then getting the construction crew in probably fall.
And it'll
yeah.
depend on how soon we can get the materials we need. There's still supply chain issues with construction. So, our hope is to have it finished and ready to open by the end of 2023, sooner, as soon as possible.
And I suppose we couldn't open part and still work on part? Probably.
I don't know
Probably
that
not.
that would be feasible if you have kids trying to take
Little munchkins
naps.
can need to sleep, I suppose.
Yeah,
Pound.
that would be
You
disruptive.
don't want children around construction sites.
Yeah. This is something we've been working on for a couple of years, and we're really excited about this. I mean, initially, I had questioned whether or not a pod concept was going to work, and I'd been to some trainings on how to add daycare to the community, and they really pushed church basements, typically with kitchens, and so this item came up, which was not talked about at our training at all, and there's some positive stuff to this, so we'll be really unique. If this turns out to be a gold concept, this will be really unique in our community, in our southern part of our state, probably in Minnesota. So, and people all have daycare issues in every city. So this is not unique to us, but we're coming up with a unique approach. And from what a little bit we've talked about in the past, the rent that we're going to charge the people that'll have the pods is very low, allowing them to actually turn a profit. And for those folks that are maybe already doing daycare in their home now and it's just not working, and it's just not working. If they wanted to move into this facility to keep, instead of closing and going to work in the public sector, we still get to keep our daycare. Or other folks who say, that's the only way I would run a daycare, if I could go to that location, run it, and come home at night. So we think it's a successful concept. I guess we're going to find out. So anyway, with that, questions, or should we move on to a motion for this? To approve the design and authorize staff to go ahead to construction bids.
Yeah, and I'll just note, you're just giving us permission to go out and get the bids. We'll bring the bids back to you for approval at a future meeting, so you're not committing to anything other than letting us go out for bids at this point.
So a motion for that?
I've been part of that childcare group, and it's exciting to see us move forward. It feels like we've spent a lot of time talking, and it's kind of exciting to be in this.
Yeah, it's taken a little over a year to get to this point.
Yeah.
I mean, construction just doesn't happen quickly, any construction project. So, yeah, it's exciting to feel like we're making some progress.
So I move to approve the childcare facility design and authorize staff to solicit construction bids.
Do we have a second?
I will second that.
We got a motion and a second. Before we move to, Heather, you gave us a tour of that facility, the previous members, and is that something you're open to with the new folks as well and the mayor?
Yeah, I
think it really helps
intend.
conceptualize what we're doing out there.
Absolutely, and to get in before we start
Yeah.
tearing down walls so you can see the before and after. I need to set up a new commissioner training, and part of that will be touring some of our housing and the daycare facility. So,
Yeah, and please attend that if you can. I know Heather did that with me 12 years ago, and that was really helpful, just understanding all of that and going by some of the houses
properties.
that we have for rent. And it just made a lot more sense when you came here and you're talking about changes and additions. So, okay, good. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. All right, moving on to number 8.1, Milford Heights Architectural Review and Committee Membership.
all right, for the sake of the new commissioners, I'll just give you a little overview. In 2007, an architectural review committee was formed for the Milford Heights First Edition. The EDA had an affordable housing subdivision that started back in about 2005, 2006. And it's up on Fender Drive. It's sort of across from the soccer fields. If you go on Fifth North out toward Sleepy Eye, it'll be on the right side. And the houses in that first subdivision on Fender Drive need to be, any new house built, the design needs to be approved by this architectural review committee prior to construction. So we have 2 vacancies on this committee that need to be filled due to Commissioners Jessica Yanni and Mark Peterson, who are no longer on the board. We need to fill those vacancies. There's only 4 lots left that would need the house approved. So this will be a fairly short-lived committee. We'll probably approve 2 houses this year and 2 houses next year, and then the work of this committee will wrap. So it's not a long commitment. So if anyone is interested in looking at house designs and considering them for approval, if you like looking at houses, it looks like Shar is volunteering.
I would also be interested in that as well.
Okay. So we have
Entertain a motion for those 2 folks.
2 volunteers.
Make a motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion for Les and Shar to join that committee. Anybody else want to join? Or any other nominations? No? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on, same type of thing on New Brick. 8.2, Heather?
Yeah, so at our last meeting, the EDA agreed to fund New Brick. Paul Wessel is the executive director. He's here today for this organization. And Paul, remind me what New Brick stands for. New Ulm
Business Resource and Innovation Center.
Thank you. So they are their own entity. They're a nonprofit organization that also helps the business community. And because they're receiving funding from the EDA, it was proposed that one of the EDA commissioners should join their board as a non-voting ex officio member to attend their meetings and keep apprised on what they've got going on with their organization and report back to the EDA. So we are looking for someone who might be interested in that. And I know Andrea had mentioned she would be interested in that as well, unless someone else really has a burning desire to.
So Paul, since we have
do
the new
that.
mayor and 3 new counselors here at this position, can you just briefly go over what your role is in New Brick and
You wanna
what it's all about?
step
so they
up
have
to
some
the mic?
understanding?
You want me to go up?
Yeah, go ahead.
Spanish Inquisition
Yep.
place there? That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Good morning. Happy New Year to everyone. The last 7 months since I've been on, truthfully, has been a lot of diving in and seeing where New Brick was at, or what was called the New Ulm Economic Development Corp. Their business model used to be buying land and then renting that land out or selling it, and therefore generating cash. Currently, we only have 1 lot left, so that compelled us to look at different business models on how this entity could survive. So the last 7 months have been digging through what the EDA does, what the Chamber does, what Brown County Economic Development does, and where can New Brick really find role and meaning in helping the community of New Ulm, and not just the community of New Ulm, Brown County as well. So that has led us kind of on a laddered approach to, first of all, going after and pursuing different grant options. But in order to do that, we had to change the structure, the corporate structure of New Brick, which was a 501c4. So we started another entity under New Brick called Project Spark. Project Spark has now received its IRS determination letter as a 501c3, which means that we can now go to foundations and to other granting organizations and apply for grants. Okay, that's the first step. So there had to be a lot of reorganization and reshuffling. And just as an aside, when you talk about when new businesses get started, you know, I've started 5 companies. I'm very familiar on different corporate structures and how things were going. And if any of your businesses need assistance in determining that, because there's tax implications on whether you file as an LLC or a sub-S or a nonprofit or a C Corp, and it depends what their exit strategy is. Do they want to become acquired? Do they want to have an ESOP? All of that should be determined up front. So if your people need to have a conversation, I think even before you write a business plan, you need to determine what type of corporate structure you have. So we can help with that, okay? So we have applied for one large grant in partnership with Region 9, which is an EDA, what's called a planning grant, and that's for about $200,000, of which New Brick would receive about $100,000. And that is for the planning of a business incubator. Now, we should know next week. They've come back to us with a couple of tweaks, but fingers crossed, we're hopeful that we get that. But that is what's called a planning grant. The planning grant then gives you money to bring in resources to plan and get data, and then the next step is filing for a much larger grant, like a $500,000 to $1 million grant. And this process can be repeated in different areas. You've heard me talk in the past about SparkBus. It's the same thing. We're filing for a USDA, RDBG, Rural Business Development Grant, for planning a commuter service from Mankato to New Ulm. And we have people involved from the University of Minnesota, from the Center for Transportation Studies. It takes a consortium of people to bring these things together. And it's a level of sophistication that this county hasn't seen before. And, you know, with Brown County declining in population, we are going to have to think differently about how to ignite new businesses in this area. So those are the 2 big initiatives for this coming year, the SparkBus and the Business Incubator. Meanwhile, we've got a whole ideation thing, and Chris and I have talked about biofuels initiative, biomass initiatives, some of that. There's going to be a lot of federal funding coming down the pipe because of the infrastructure bill. And that can mean buses, that can mean alternate energy, all of that stuff. But it's been a tremendous job to rebuild this organization because, frankly, a lot hadn't been done for almost a decade. And that's why we renamed it New Brick as well, because we needed to kind of get clarity, because there was confusion when people would come to New Ulm and go, well, I need to talk to the Economic Development Authority or the Economic Development Corporation. That just didn't make much sense. So those are the initiatives. This last month, we welcomed Mark Den, who's president of Citizens Bank, onto our board, and Moira Howenstein, who is a principal at Bolton Mink, and Pam Bishop, who's the president of Smith, is now an ex officio board member of New Brick as well. So a lot of work, but we're optimistic, and hopefully by next month, I'll be able to report to you whether we've received that grant or not.
As you heard earlier, we gave $50,000 to New Brick. We've asked Paul to come to our meetings and talk to us. He should really be on the agenda for a New Brick report.
I am.
If I receive a report and have something to put on the agenda, it'll be put on the agenda.
So we want a written report. Can you do that?
I can do that.
You don't have to do a book or anything. Just,
I understand.
Great. Other questions for
any
Paul?
questions? Please.
I just am wondering if you can just touch briefly on the business incubator you were talking about.
First of all, and I, there was an article that was published in the journal about this. Business incubators don't make money. We went and saw Albert Lee. We went and saw Red Wing. We went and saw Hutch. I visited Owatonna. The thing is, they've been doing this for almost a decade. And so not only is New Ulm competing with other towns that are similar sized, we're competing with South Dakota and Iowa who are giving away property for free. So the thought of a business incubator is to have a space where people can begin a business and thereby prove out their concept and get some traction. And in exchange, they get space, they get a lower rent, or if they're running, they could get the $10,000 from Chris's program and things like that. The challenge is, how do you kick them out of the nest once, and so you have to be very clear about your expectations, because they base their budget on what they're currently paying for rent and utilities and all that. And then all of a sudden, if they go to that next step, maybe their rent doubles, and so that becomes problematic. So I think we need to think about how we get them off on a different glide path. But Hutchinson is very different from Red Wing. Hutchinson is more focused on manufacturing, where Red Wing I like to use as a model because they kind of align with our geographic constraints as well, with a river holding them in on one side and bluffs holding them in, so they're a long town as well. So in downtown Red Wing, one of their models is shared space, where they have remote workers, but if they want to come to an office and have a Zoom call with corporate, they don't have kids running around or chasing the dog or whatever, that's a part of what they're doing. Now, Red Wing worked with a group out of Vermont, which we are working with now, also called CORI, which is called the Center of Rural Innovation. And Red Wing received a $2 million grant working with CORI. CORI received a $37 million grant from the Small Business Administration, and they have a program now called Build to Scale. Build to Scale has been implemented in Red Wing, and Aberdeen, South Dakota was just awarded a Build to Scale project as well. And so our goal is to work with CORI and eventually take this incubator model out. Remember, we talked about the planning grants. Get the planning grants in, and the next step is to go for a much larger grant to help us get started.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Makes sense?
Comments?
What I really like about the whole idea of New Brick is, I know enough about you guys now that, it's one thing to start a business that you think is personally very interesting and fun. That doesn't mean it's ever going to make any money and survive for very long. And New Brick, I think, is focused on, if I start a business, will it be of value to a potential customer base?
That's exactly right, Tom. And it's asking questions like, what's your go-to-market strategy? What's your distribution strategy? What's your customer support strategy? You can write a business plan. Anybody can write a business plan. The question is that business plan going to make money?
Exactly. See, I just retired very recently, but I did this for 50 years, pretty much either as part, as an employee at one time and then as an owner later. And I think sometimes we tend to ignore that. We run into people that they think they've got a neat idea because it interests them personally.
That's correct.
And sometimes it's hard to find anybody else who's interested in buying anything from them. and that's kind of the way life is.
Would you let me cite Sweet Haven Tonics for a minute?
Sure.
I was intimately...
Good example.
Huh?
That's a good example,
Yeah,
I think.
I was intimately involved with Sweet Haven. And in full disclosure, I'm a shareholder in Sweet Haven Tonics. But I wrote their business plan, their go-to-market strategy. But not only that, I assembled their board, and getting a board of people that can make a difference. So with Sweet Haven, we have one of the family members from the Quick Trip family in La Crosse, Wisconsin. We have some other people high in the hospitality industry. And what does that do? And that's when I talk about small businesses. If you can extend your reach, and that's what I'm trying to do with New Brick by forming alliances at the University of Minnesota with Corey and all of those things, you bring in expertise that you don't have. Sweet Haven Tonics is on a rocket ship, and it's because we put these structures in place. But it's further than that. It's like, okay, how do you want to be structured? Well, I want to be an LLC. Why? Okay, because there were few owners, we can take this down. However, you own the intellectual property to that LLC. So what we'll do is we'll set up another LLC where we'll license the intellectual property to Sweet Haven Tonic. And why do you do that? Because if you become acquired, then to extinguish a royalty agreement is only a capital asset, and you're only charged capital gains and not ordinary income. So you save about 13% in income tax. These are the things that need to be done when you're talking to a business. And that's why we're here.
Great.
And we are a partnership and how this moves forward. And so we're glad to have you here and glad to have you on board. And so we have Andrea who's expressed an interest. I would have some interest as well. Anybody else?
Well, I would too, but I mean.
Would Tom would too? Okay. Since there is 3, do we want to maybe wait till next month and appoint somebody so Andrea's here?
Sure.
And we can talk about it and then, or do you want to get going and want somebody on board?
You know what, Les, we're moving.
One more month will be all right?
Yeah, you're fine.
All right, so I think I'd entertain a motion to table this, and then we'll see who really wants it next month.
And the other thing is, I'd encourage, if there's any questions from your committee,
Yeah.
just call us. Have coffee with me at Lola's, and we'll share with you our vision, but it's been a lot of rebuilding right now, and I think we're headed in the right direction, and I'm excited about the future.
Great,
Thank you for your time.
thank you.
All right.
So I'd entertain a motion to table this item until the February meeting. Anybody okay with that? Or offer that motion? Tom moves it, do a second?
I'll second that.
Shar seconds it. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, number 8.3, daycare donations. So as Heather mentioned, we are getting donations. So I'll read these first. $100 from Bill and Sue Otto, $500 from Florian and Rose Dietrich, $200 from Jane and Robert Shopacom, $10 from Valine Silcox, $100 from Dane and Naomi Stewart, $50 from Terry and Ellie Sweeney, $400 from Judith Kuster, $500 anonymous, $25 from Lisa and Dave Bruns, $50 from Diana Storman, and $750 from the Optimist Club. How optimistic of them. And for a total of $2,235. So I'd entertain a motion to accept those donations for our child care project.
I offer the resolution and waive the reading accepting donations to the New Ulm Economic Development Authority Child Care Project for the period of December 2022.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Do we have a second? So this is the resolution. So Heather, will you call the roll?
Commissioner Burke,
Yes.
Commissioner Henn,
Yes.
Commissioner Markgraf,
Yes.
Commissioner Kalk,
Yes.
Commissioner Schultz.
Yes, motion carries. Moving on to item number 8.4, discussion of potential sale of properties at 318, 320, and 326 North Broadway.
Commission President, Commissioners, this is just kind of an open discussion right now. I have a developer that's potentially interested in buying the 3 lots. So this is the lots right next to Broadway House. So technically the corner of 4th and Broadway moving towards Broadway or Broadway House. And before, they have a couple individuals that are interested in potentially some office space, and they don't want to take up office, retail space downtown. So this would be a nice spot to potentially put a building. Again, we have a parking lot, a house, and an open lot there. So this is more just open discussion, whether you would entertain that motion. They would come back with a proposal if you would be in favorable of potentially selling those lots.
Any more detail on what they want to do other than just office space?
No,
Is it a
again,
company that wants to move in, or how much can you tell us? Or are you allowed to?
not until we figure out because I would have them come and present to you if you were favorable to entertaining the motion to sell the lots.
What do we currently do with that property?
We rent the parking lot out to food vendors.
Oh.
Broadway House parks there during heavy snow events.
Then we have the
The
house.
house that's there, and the other one's an open grass field.
The house could probably be moved if it had to be. It's a small enough house.
EDA considered selling these parcels a few years ago when Bank Midwest was looking to build their new bank, and they ultimately went with a different location, but we were looking at the cost of moving the house and kind of what we would do for snow removal if we no longer had that vacant parking lot. And, those are things we would need to consider, but the EDA they were in negotiations to sell these parcels.
Yes.
A while ago.
And then it fell through, and like I say, the bank built elsewhere, but
And didn't we have a meat market that wanted 2 of the lots at one point? I remember.
we were approached by someone that wanted to potentially open a meat market there, and that never panned out either. So, we've been approached before. There isn't a lot available downtown, so it's, kind of prime real estate in that business district.
Is that the only area they're looking at, or are they looking at other areas as well?
That's kind of the only area at this point in time that they're looking at.
I would have an interest in, I think, we need development down there, and we don't want to have any more of our downtown stores turned into office buildings. We need retail down there. So I would certainly want to take a look at what they have to offer. Okay. Now, commissioners,
I agree.
all we could do is say no, right? I think the people that have been in that house have been in there a long time, right?
The renters we have there now have been there probably 5 years. They've been
Yeah.
really good renters, but,
Yeah.
the house is getting older, and we just put a bunch of money into the bathroom to fix that up. And I've always kept in my mind the possibility that we might sell at some point, and how much money do we want to keep putting into that house if it's going to, get demolished or moved.
And that's where our food trucks are during the summer as well, one of those lots. So we'd have to give that some thought, because that has been very popular. So we'd have to have some discussion on, is there an option for them somewhere else? But, so everybody here is willing, wants to hear a little more?
I'd be
Why
willing to
not?
listen. I mean,
Is that good enough direction, or you want
I'll
more?
let them know, and we'll get them on the agenda when they're ready to present.
Sounds good.
So we don't need a motion on this particular item. So we'll move on to 9.1. Heather.
All right. So this is economic development activity for the month of December. As far as the New Ulm Partnership goes, we've been working for several months on a billboard campaign to advertise that New Ulm has jobs. We have jobs all the way from entry level up to professional, and our employers are telling us that they're having trouble filling those jobs. So we wanted to see what we could do to help, and so we developed this billboard campaign. Billboards went up yesterday, one on Highway 60 outside of Madelia and one on Highway 14 west of Sleepy Eye. And letting people know that New Ulm has jobs, and it's driving them to our new economic development website that Chris just pulled up for you here. This is the homepage. This is the billboard, drives them to newulmbusiness.com. If they go to that website, it goes to the jobs posted on the Chamber job board. The Chamber partnered with us on this to graciously allow non-Chamber members to post their jobs on there as well, specifically for this billboard campaign. So the EDA agreed to pay for the first 4 weeks the production costs of the billboard to get them up, and then the first 4 weeks. And then we were able to get 7 businesses to sponsor, each sponsor 4 weeks to keep the billboards up. So they went up yesterday, and they'll be up through the middle of August. So we are hoping to have some good results in helping our employers. So the logos that you see on the billboard, those are the businesses that sponsored the billboard, so they got to have their logo on the billboard. However, businesses that didn't sponsor the billboard can still post their jobs and benefit from the billboard campaign. So it does benefit all employers that post their jobs on the chamber job board, and we've done outreach to let them know that they should be posting their job openings there. So that has been months in the works and finally came to fruition, as well as we've been talking for a long time about the new economic development website, and that went live yesterday as well. Also, because the billboards were going up, we needed the website to be live to drive them to the job openings. So, Chris, do you want to just give them a quick little tour?
Yes. Okay, so this is the landing page when you come here. We did put together, designed a new kind of economic development logo. So it's NU with the arrow pointed up. So we're open for business, growth, those type of things. And if you kind of turn it sideways, looks like the Minnesota River kind of plays into a lot of different things there. Much better than the city seal or the PUC logo that we currently use on everything. And it separates it also from the chamber logo that's out there. That's kind of used on almost everything nowadays. Adam Tolles helped us with the website, went out with his drone to take some aerial footage of New Ulm. This will kind of be a rotating banner from time to time, depending on the season. But as you go down, you come in here and it's, why choose New Ulm? So business friendly, quality of life, a lot of stuff site selectors are probably going to be looking at. And then, for small business, here are things to help small business looking to start, already in business, our incentives. And then featured information, business success stories. So we're going to start really touting our own successes out there. I know the Journal does a good job of getting our stories there, but we're also going to be putting basically all our press releases on the site, so we don't have to link to a Journal article. It's just there for people to read our success stories, and then any featured information. So this is kind of we have the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. So anything we feel that businesses need to know is going to be kind of static on the featured information, and that'll change whenever new information is needed. And then our news around town. So this is really going to be everything we need for economic development purposes, all the stories, all our press releases, Oktoberfest, yes, that's more of a tourism, but we'll actually reach out to business owners and talk to them about, well, what does Oktoberfest mean for your business specifically? So when people come, it's like, oh, there's tourism, but this, is, the 2 weekends where we have, high traffic and increased sales and stuff like that. So to kind of tie that tourism, economic development all together, our art stuff. This was a really good story about, 3 families coming to town that wanted to be here, and they work remotely. So again, not necessarily business related, but again, those remote workers coming in, helping the economy. And so whenever we post a new story, that'll be the one here, and it'll push everything down, but you can go to the news section and see everything. And then New Ulm is here for you. And this is kind of whether you're a business looking to relocate or expand, here are some services. I know Adam is currently working with our GIS partner, GIS Planning, to get our property search in this look and feel. So right now that goes over to the city website. And once that changes, we're actually going to shut down the business section of the city website. And when you click on business on the city website, it's going to go to this. So you're in economic development. And then the website is newulmbusiness.com. Makes a lot more sense for businesses here, but we can go through, the choose New Ulm, live, work, play. Kind of the quality of life, great schools, so why would you choose here? And again, this is what I would consider kind of the soft launch. There are going to be some more features and things that we find that are wrong that we'll change and we'll tweak. But there are a couple more features that I've seen in other economic development websites that I would like to integrate if possible. But again, I very much would like each commissioner to kind of play with it, see what works, what doesn't work. Very open to suggestions. And same thing with the partnership. We're going to give it to the partnership members as well to have them take a look at it. But as of right now, it is up and ready to go. I can't see that far. Let's see, where are we? No, that's contact. There should be a resource page, but I can't see it. There it is. So this is where we're going to have all those outside external partners. So the state, DEED, Newbrick would be on here as well. Chamber, those partners would be on this site. But if they specifically had incentives for businesses, we would just have that incentive list on the incentive page, so they wouldn't have to go to a different site. So, like I said, living, breathing document at this point, and we'll get all the pieces. But to me, this was a really good start, and the look and feel. I feel economic development, specifically site selectors and businesses, are looking for when they're looking to choose places.
Looks wonderful.
Looks really good.
Good
My concern with something new like this, and it's big, somebody's got to keep it up and someone's got to keep it current. Does that fall in your office, Heather?
Well, yes and no. Adam with
Adam.
4C Studios has the contract, and is that for the year?
Yeah, for the year. And a lot of it, I can edit it on the fly if I need to. If I'm out at an event, I can snap a photo, take a quick, interview with a business owner, and I can post that and put that as part of, the new news in town. It's pretty easy to do that
He
stuff.
will be training myself and my administrative assistant, Lisa, to make changes to the website or add things to it. I'm meeting with him Thursday afternoon to start working on the success stories. And he's willing to take his time to go out and take pictures and do interviews and create content for us. So.
Because this is really wonderful, and these comprehensive websites can be so helpful, but there's nothing more frustrating than clicking on something and it's a dead link, or the data's, all the information is from last year, and they haven't updated that one. And then you're like, well, how much do you trust?
Yeah.
So really, even though it looks phenomenal, we're just going to have to stay on top of it.
Yeah, and the way it's set up, really the big things are going to be the demographic information, which Adam will help us put that together. The news around town, because that's what's going to drive people if they follow, if they're following, because that's going to be updated on a more regular basis. So they'll get notifications that the incentives will pretty much stay the same. We'll have to be on top if we change, application process or something like that. But for the most part, the news is going to be the huge kind of updated on a daily basis. Much like Twitter, you have to throw some stuff out there to show that you're active in those roles. So I think it's a good start. And Adam also is going to help us with photography and stuff. A lot of this is stock right now, but whether it's going to Mid-Ice and taking pictures of people working for small business or Call of Woodworking, stuff like that, will eventually replace a lot of these stock photos with actual stuff around the city.
Very good questions from the board. Comments? Just a note for the new people at the very end of this agenda item is where you can click to see who's got the loans, the $10,000 loans, and all those are always on this section, the last page. Although when I click on it, I can't read them because the print is too small, but probably because it's a tablet and not a laptop. But so you can see where those funds have been in the past, who's paying and how much they have to pay, that kind of stuff. Okay, hearing that, I just entertain a motion to accept the report.
So moved.
Michelle's, do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Shar seconds it. Any other questions, comments? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Hearing no other information, the only thing I would suggest for next month's agenda as well, if our new president's okay with it, is since we do have the mayor and 3 new folks, and maybe we want to spend a few minutes on the front end of the meeting to introduce ourselves, maybe what we hope to see with economic development, And I just think that might help since that's the majority of our group here, is just so we all get to know each other as we move forward and what your passion might be or what you'd like to see, or we don't need to spend a lot of time on it, but see if Andrea is okay with that. She is the president. If she doesn't want to do that, she doesn't have to, but I think it would be helpful if we all could get to know each other a little bit better and as we move forward. We have a lot of stuff to do, a lot of stuff coming up in '23, so. So hearing nothing additional, I'll adjourn this meeting.
Wow.